This is a 2020 Tesla Model 3 and it has just over 100,000 miles on it. And today I want to answer some of the important questions that people have when it comes to high mileage Teslas. Like, how much battery has it lost? How much does it cost to maintain? What do I like about it, and what drives me absolutely insane about it? I'm also going to take you through every single service visit in detail that this thing has had over the past year. So to get us started, let me first tell you how long I've had this car and how many miles I've put on it. So I got this car about 11 months ago. We're coming up on a year, and in that time I've put about 30,000 miles on it. When I bought it, it had 76,000 miles, and now it has almost 107,000 miles. So just over 30,000 miles has been put on this in a little bit under a year. So it's safe to say that I've spent a lot of time in this car, so I can tell you what I like about it, what I really don't like about it, and really the ins and outs of everything about this. So since we're already on the outside of the car, the first thing we're going to take a look at is the exterior and see how it's holding up. And the first thing I want to bring your attention to is right down here, because when I bought the car, down here on both sides, the driver and passenger side, this was starting to rust out right here. So what I did to fix this is just took some Rust-Oleum and literally some black spray paint and painted right over this, and now it is holding up much better. So that's something you're going to want to take a look at if you're considering buying another one of these used. Another thing while we're right here is tires, which I'm going to talk more in depth about later. But these are the stock tires that would have came on this car when it was new from the factory, but these are not the tires that came with the car when I bought it used, and we're going to talk about why that's important later. And really, when it comes to the exterior of this car and how it's holding up, I don't think there is much damage on the exterior that has happened since the car has rolled off the factory, because I mean, there are some panel fitment issues and panel gaps, like this front lid here. In the front part here, it kind of like dips down under this other metal piece and then it comes back up. It doesn't really fit very well. There's also some other weird panel gaps and fitment issues that just don't quite line up on the outside of the car, but that's just how these cars are built. They're honestly not built that well, which when we look at the interior, that's something that we're going to take a look at more in depth as well. But then coming inside the car here, the first thing I want to draw your attention to is the leather on these seats, because it is fake leather. It's synthetic leather, but it is held up incredibly well. I mean, like, with the exception of the driver's seats, all the other seats basically look brand new. You can't even tell that they've been worth and through 100,000 miles worth of wear, and even the driver's seat still looks in pretty good condition. So even though it's fake leather, me personally, I'd rather have fake leather that still looks this good after 100,000 miles than real leather that's already going to be looking worn after a year or two. So now we're fully inside the car, and there's really not that much to talk about when it comes to interior wear, because there isn't really much here. You have a steering wheel and the screen and a plain dashboard. That's pretty much it. But what I am going to talk about is the quality of the materials used in the interior, because in all honesty, they're really not that good. A lot of people still have an impression that Teslas are like super expensive luxury cars, but really, don't kid yourself. Especially these Model 3s and Ys, they are not luxury cars. For example, over here in the corner here, I have this piece of foam shoved in between the windshield and the speaker grill, because without that there, the speaker grill rattles like crazy every single time you go over a bump. Now, that could have happened over time, but I have heard that they still haven't fixed that issue even in the new Model 3s, so I think that is just Tesla quality for you. It's really not the best. I know the quality of the newer cars is much better, but if you're buying a used one, you're probably not buying a 2024 or 2025 model. For example, on the newer cars, this material here has basically been replaced with this more like carpety material, which this I like, but this I do not like. And in the newer models, they've replaced this pretty much with all this carpety material, which I like more. And I'll tell you why I don't like this, because it always looks dirty. It's impossible to clean. It always looks like there's dust on it, even right after you clean it, and it just feels cheap. It doesn't feel good, it doesn't look good, and I just don't like it. Another thing that's really cheap about this is the doors. They do not sound good when you close the doors at all. Listen to this. That is not a solid thunk, but what's even worse is if you have the window open and then you close the door, you can hear the window glass rattle inside the door, and it sounds like it's gonna break. Yikes. But it's not all bad, so now I'm going to talk about what I like about the car. And the first thing is the phone key system. This car does not have a traditional key fob, although you can buy one if you really do need one. But it's much easier to just use the phone key. So all you have to do is have your phone's Bluetooth on, and you can just walk up to the car and it opens for you. It's that simple, and it is so easy through the Tesla app, which is a whole nother thing. There is so much you can do through the Tesla app. You can control almost every aspect of this car through the Tesla app anywhere in the world. It's also so easy to lend this car to somebody else because you can just have them download the Tesla app and you can just add them as a driver on your Tesla. And you can even set like speed limits and restrictions. So if you're like using this as a rental, that is like a feature that is super useful for this. The next thing I really like about this car is the sound system, because not only does it have a lot of bass, because a lot of car sound systems have a lot of bass, but the clarity of the system is extremely good, because I'm kind of like obsessed with audio quality a little bit. So a lot of people will just hear a system and be like, oh, it has a lot of bass, so it sounds good. But that is not necessarily what that means, but this system has a lot of bass, and it is good bass, it is clear bass, there's a lot of clarity, and the bass also does not overpower the high end, which is something that's common in a lot of systems that have a lot of bass. The high end is still able to push through with a lot of clarity, and that's something I really like about this car. Another thing that's really great is that it's really fast. The next thing that's really great about this car is, of course, this screen. This is the main reason why most people buy Teslas, is you're really just buying this screen that happens to have a car attached to it. And I'm going to show you exactly why this is worth your money. But really though, this screen is great. It has built-in Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, TuneIn. It has regular YouTube on it. It has Netflix on it. It has a web browser on it. This really is just a computer on wheels. I could talk about this forever, but I'm going to keep it brief here. It is great. So now I'm going to move on to the things that annoy me and the things that I don't like about this car. And the first thing is probably going to be controversial, but I really do not like the design of these door handles, simply because they are pretty much impossible to use if you have your hands full. A regular door handle, you can, if you have something in one of your hands, you can still probably pull it and use it, but this requires so much of your hand's dexterity, because you have to push your thumb forward and then flip your hand around so you can grab the handle. It requires so much dexterity of you to use. If you're holding like a drink in one hand and a bag of food in the other one, you're gonna have to put one of those things down on top of the car, then open the door, then grab it again, then get inside, which if it was just a regular door handle, I would probably be able to do it with that thing still in my hand. So another thing that I don't like, which may kind of contradict something that I said earlier, which is that I really like how the phone key system works. I do, but I really like it when it works, and I don't like it when it doesn't work. Now, for the first like 5 months that I had this car, it worked flawlessly with absolutely no issues. But then either there was an update with the car, or Apple pushed out an iOS update that just completely broke the phone key, and it was not working multiple times per day. And like I said, I was using this as an Uber machine, so I was in and out of the car a lot of times per day, and it was not working multiple times per day, and I would have to turn off the Bluetooth on my phone and turn it back on, and then it would work. So you should always take the backup key card with you. And now I've especially learned that lesson when I got stranded in the rain for about 5 minutes because I could not get inside the car because the phone key would not work. So what happened there is I was coming back from delivering a piece of food in the absolute pouring rain. Like, it is like downpouring. And I go to open the door, it doesn't open, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So now I'm trying to get on my phone to turn off the Bluetooth and turn it back on so I can open the car door, but it is raining so hard that the water on my phone screen is making it so the screen will not work, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to stand here in the rain until it lets up so that I can actually use my phone screen and get into the car. And that's what I had to do. I had to stand in the pouring rain for about 5 minutes so that I could use my phone screen, just so that I could get into the car. So I want to say that phone key is great and it's really reliable, and it was up until that update happened and something broke it. But now it seems to have been fixed, because for about the past 2 months it has been working flawlessly again and I've had no issues. But I would like to say it's reliable, but clearly it's not reliable if a software update can break it. Even if they fix it eventually, it's still not reliable if it can be broken at some point. Another thing that really annoys me about this car is that the built-in navigation uses Google Maps, so it's really good, but this LTE connectivity is terrible. And this may just be because AT&T's network is terrible, because that's the network that they use, but I really wish that you could get your own SIM card for this that uses a different network, because this loses connection all the time in various areas, so I can't even use the navigation in the car sometimes when I'm in certain areas, and it is extremely annoying. Now, as good as this screen is, because this is a 2020 model, that means there is kind of an elephant in the room that we have to talk about, and that elephant is that this car has one of the older Intel processors. Now, around like mid-2021, 2022, Tesla started putting AMD Ryzen chips in their cars as the processors that control this whole infotainment system. But this was before that. So this has an Intel Atom, which is an incredibly slow chip made for like low power computer devices. Intel doesn't even make it anymore. They haven't made it for years. So I understand why they switched to the Ryzen chip. But the unfortunate part is now that these cars are starting to get left behind when it comes to software updates. They did add some new stuff, but the problem is the cars with the newer Ryzen chips, they got a lot more stuff than just this. The newer cars with the Ryzen chips, they got way more features in new updates, and it seems like almost every single new update that comes out, there is at least one feature that is left out of these older cars because the Intel processor can't handle it. For example, Tesla kind of had like a whole rework of their like visualization of the car when it's parked over here about a year ago, and it allowed you on the cars with the Ryzen chips to expand this whole thing over so it takes up the whole screen, and this car will take up the whole screen. But you can't do that on these older Intel ones because I guess the processor can't handle it. So that is kind of the unfortunate reality of owning a car that's like a phone, is that it will probably be obsolete within like 5 or 6 years of it coming out, and this is a 2020 model, so it's been out for 6 years. And it's unfortunately starting to become obsolete. There are also some other drawbacks to this having the Intel processor. Like, let me try to open up YouTube here. You're going to see it's going to take a second. Some things are pretty laggy on this. I've tried to use the YouTube app, and I honestly don't even use it that much because, in my experience, it has been pretty laggy. It's actually working pretty well right now. I actually don't think I've experienced it work this well in this car. So maybe they've optimized it a little bit in an update, but you can see this is taking a while to load, and you're probably like, oh, it's not that bad or whatever. But the thing is, I've been in the newer cars that have the Ryzen chips, and they don't lag at all. Nothing takes time to load. Here, let me pull up Spotify. Let's see how long this takes to load. See, so that loaded pretty quick, but the problem is in the newer cars, it loads even faster. So at this point, it's not that big of a deal because there only are like a few features that are really only gimmicks at this point that have been coming to the new cars and have been excluded from this one. But that is something that is only going to get worse with time. This is only going to become more laggy over time. This is only going to be missing out on more features over time. And another thing as well that I didn't really talk about was full self-driving and hardware 3 versus hardware 4. But if we look at the software version of this, this has a full self-driving computer number 3, as you can see, and it is stuck on a full self-driving version of 12.6.4, which came out like a long time ago. We're on version like 14.3 or something in the newer cars. But you can't get anything past 12.6.4 in cars that have hardware 3, which that's even worse because they only started putting hardware 4 in cars around like 2024. So you have to get like basically a brand new car to even get hardware 4. And Tesla has recently said that full self-driving, like completely unsupervised, will not be possible on cars with hardware 3 like this one. So if you care about full self-driving, that is something to consider. The next thing is that this car has a pretty rough ride, and these two things kind of go hand in hand. Not only is the ride rough, but the cabin is not that quiet either. You'd expect for a car that cost almost $50,000 when it was new, that it would have a pretty quiet interior and a nice smooth ride. But it doesn't. And the last thing I have on this list for things I don't like about it is the amount of range that you're going to lose in the winter. Now, of course, this is completely dependent on where you live, but I live in Wisconsin, so it gets cold around here, and lithium-ion batteries do not like cold. Now, I have a whole other video that I've made about EV range loss in winter, so I'm just going to refer you to that video, which is going to be up here in this corner, or that corner. I don't remember. But what are the actual maintenance costs of this car over the past year? Well, I'm going to drive back to the studio and I'm going to tell you in detail every piece of maintenance I have had to do on this car since I got it. Let's ride. Man, that thing is fast. Anyways, now that we're back in the studio, sitting in a lawn chair, I'm going to tell you about every single service visit and every single maintenance item that I have had to do in this car and exactly how much it costs. But before we get started, this video is sponsored by me and a new channel I started with my best friend. It's basically just a podcast where we read Reddit stories, talk about them, have a good laugh, judge people. That's what Reddit is for. I know that's a very different type of content than this, but if you have any kind of interest, there'll be a link in the description or in a card up here. So thank you very much. Now, on to the repairs. Now, the first thing I'm going to tell you is going to sound really bad until I explain it, so I'm just going to say it. This car has been to the Tesla service center 8 times in the past year. And obviously, that sounds really bad. But now I have to explain why that is. So I have all the service history with literally every single invoice pulled up on my phone here. So we're just going to start with the first one, which was July 31st of 2025, which was literally like less than 2 weeks after I bought the car. And that was because when I bought the car, the electronic door handle, those door handles that I don't like, the mechanism was not working correctly. The door would open just fine, but the problem is when you would let go of the button to open the door on the inside, or you would let go of the latch on the outside, as soon as you let off of that, it would think the door was closed, even if it was still open. And that's a problem because there is no like door frame. The glass of the door just kind of goes up against the frame of the car. So when you press the button to open the door, it rolls down the window a little bit so that when you close it, the glass doesn't slam up against the metal because it can shatter if that happens. So this was not a good problem to have. And it also caused the door to not fully shut all the way unless you literally slammed it shut, which again, is not good because when that glass is not rolled down, there's a higher chance of shattering the glass when you shut the door. So adding the fact that you have to slam it to even latch the door was not good. So I'm reading the invoice here. They said it was a problem with the left front door latch and they replaced that, and that cost a grand total of $363.45. Now, I wish the story ended there, but it did not, unfortunately, because that thing that they fixed and replaced, it worked for about a day just fine, and then it started doing the exact same thing again. So on August 26th, almost a month later, because they didn't have any open service spots for that long, I had to take the car in again for the exact same issue that they claimed to have fixed the first time, but didn't. And this time, what they said it was caused by a problem with the puddle light function, and they replaced the puddle light, and that solved the issue. Now, what is the puddle light? Well, it's literally this little tiny light on the bottom of the door frame that just illuminates the ground a little bit for you to be able to see easier. So I'm guessing that was probably the problem the entire time, was this puddle light, which, by the way, is literally a $17 part. But they replaced a whole nother part that wasn't even the issue, and they still charged me for it. And also, to replace this one light that cost $17, once you add in the labor and all the fees, that was $134.25. So once everything is all told, that whole endeavor of getting the door handle fixed cost a grand total of $497.70. Just to get a door handle working correctly. So now this next one is not something that I went to the service center for, but it's something that I did myself that was a maintenance item. And unfortunately, it's because I had to do it myself because the car would not move until I replaced this thing. And what I'm talking about is the 12-volt battery. Now, if you know EVs, you probably already know this, but if you don't, all EVs, except for the Tesla Cybertruck, use a 12-volt battery that is pretty much the same as a 12-volt battery in an internal combustion engine. Now, why did they need that? They literally have a huge battery pack under the car. Well, it's because the battery pack under the car in this specific car is a 400-volt class battery architecture, but all the car's electronics and stuff run on 12 volts because they're basically like off-the-shelf parts. So instead of having a bunch of circuitry to bring down the voltage from like 400 some volts down to 12 volts and also risk all the electronics being hooked up to a high voltage battery pack if that rectifier somehow failed, they're just like, we're just going to put a 12-volt battery system in the car because those are already things that are in cars anyway, and those are parts that you can get easily. And also, just like in a gas car, that 12-volt battery will eventually die and you'll need to replace it. Now, the car is supposed to warn you when the low voltage battery is nearing the end of life and you should replace it soon. Well, I did not get any such warning. And one night I was trying to look at the car through the app to see what percent it was at, and it was supposed to be charging at this point. And I'm going into the app and it's not responding to anything. And it's saying that the car has been asleep for like the past hour. And I'm like, why is it not waking up? So I go down to the garage to like see what's going on. And I try to open the door and I have the phone in my pocket, so it should unlock, and it doesn't do anything. It's making some weird clicking noises like it's trying to do something, but the door won't open. So at that point, I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, what is going on here? And then I thought about it for a second and I'm like, wait a minute, this car does have a 12-volt battery that powers the electronics, and this car is 5 years old, so it might need to be replaced. So I'm like, how do I go about doing that when I can't open the door? So I look up where the 12-volt battery is in the car, and it's just under the frunk like it would be in any other car. It's just hidden under this little plastic piece that comes off really easily. But the problem is, it's in the frunk, and the only way to open the frunk is via an electronic mechanism that needs the 12-volt battery to be working in order to unlatch itself. So I know what you're probably thinking. Well, that is the stupidest piece of design I've ever heard of. Why would they put the 12-volt battery in a locked compartment that can only be unlocked if the 12-volt battery is working? And yes, I would agree that is really stupid, but Tesla was not that stupid because they did put in a backup system. So if you look on the front of the car, you'll notice there's this little circular cutout in the front, and that's where this backup system is. Because if you push that in, these two wires come out for your convenience. And what you're supposed to do with these wires is, with a 9-volt battery, put the red wire on the positive side and the black wire on the negative side, and the frunk should just pop right open. Now I know what you're probably also thinking, which is, well, that's a huge security risk if anybody can walk up to your car with a 9-volt battery and pop your frunk. Well, Tesla put in a backup system to this backup system because it's only supposed to pop the frunk if the 12-volt battery is completely dead. But it turns out that that safety feature is also a huge flaw in this backup system, because that means when I tried to do that, it didn't work. The frunk would not open because the battery was not dead enough for this backup system to work, but the battery wasn't charged enough for the regular system to work. So now I'm kind of in a bind at this point. So now I'm thinking, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to have to get this thing towed out of my own garage. But I didn't have to end up doing that, but I'll get to that in a second. But that also would have presented another problem, having to tow it out of my garage, because at the time that the 12-volt battery died, the car was plugged in to my home charger. And guess what latches the charger to the car? An electronic mechanism that's in the car that only works if the 12-volt battery has power. So now not only is the 12-volt battery dead and I can't get the door open, I can't get the frunk open, but the charger is also stuck to the car. But like I said, that didn't end up being an issue here, but it's just something that I thought of. And it's also a great lesson in why you should always have mechanical backups for electronic mechanisms. But anyways, let's get into how this story actually ended. Eventually, after about 2 hours of trying, I was able to hold the terminals on the 9-volt battery, which was able to give the 12-volt battery just enough of a boost for the car's computers to boot up for just a second so that the Bluetooth would connect to the app on my phone and I could pop the frunk via the app, and it had just enough juice to use the frunk popper mechanism for it to finally open after about 2 hours worth of trying. And it's a good thing I did, because I had to go to work the next morning and it's like 1:30 in the morning at this point. And I'm like, I am so thankful that I got that open, because I feel like I would have had to get this thing towed out of my own garage if I could not get that open. So I'm like, I can finally go to bed, and I'm going to have to get up early tomorrow and take somebody else's car to the auto parts store to get a new battery. So it's not hard to find a battery for these. It's just like any other car battery. So I was able to just go to the auto parts store in the morning, buy a new battery that costs $200, except I think you get $10 back when you bring the old battery back. So it cost $190, right? And luckily, that's the end of my problems with the 12-volt battery system. But funnily enough, right now in the Tesla app, it says that I need to replace the low voltage battery soon. And I replaced it less than a year ago, so I don't know why it is now telling me that I need to replace it. Why couldn't it have told me that like 9 months ago? So that's just something to be aware of, is that it's supposed to warn you in advance if the battery needs to be replaced, but it did not. And if it dies on you, you will not be able to open the doors. You may not be able to open the frunk, and you may have to get the car towed, which is ridiculous. I don't know why that would even be a question of like, oh, my 12-volt battery died. Do I have to get the car towed? That is so stupid. Anyways, enough of that story. It ended well enough. It was just a huge, I feel like completely unnecessary disaster just because of the way the car is designed. But we're moving on to the next service visit, which is September 11th, yikes, of 2025. So this was for, let's see, what was this for? Oh, this wasn't even a maintenance thing that I needed to do. It was just because I wanted to get this car retrofitted with the CCS charging thing, because these older cars, I don't know exactly what year it is, but I think it's around 2021 and older Model 3s cannot charge at any DC fast charger that is not a Tesla supercharger, unless you get this CCS charging retrofit, where basically they just swap out the charge port module that's on the side of the car. But this is something I want to talk about too, because this is something that I really like that Tesla offers, is that they let you retrofit some things that they end up adding to the newer cars onto the older cars. Now, of course, it's not like that with everything, because like I talked about earlier, with this having one of the older Intel processors, there's no way to retrofit to an AMD processor, even though I wish that there was, because that would be amazing and it would really expand the longevity of this car. But they do offer it for some things, like the CCS charging retrofit. And to get that retrofitted, it cost me about $368 for that, which I don't think is a bad price considering how much I have now used the car at non-superchargers. So that's another thing you're going to want to look at if you're looking at a used one of these, is that if it's like a I think like mid 2021 model, it might not have this CCS charging enabled, but it will tell you in the software settings of the car if it has this or not. If you just click on additional information on the software page, it'll tell you all the things that it does have and all the things that it doesn't have. So this was a service visit that wasn't actually because something broke. It's just because I wanted to get something put on the car. And this will not be the only one of those types of service visits. And that's why I said at the beginning, like, oh, it's been to service 8 times in the past year. That sounds really bad, but it will make more sense because there will be other service visits like this, including this next one, which is from December 9th, 2025. And this is where I'm going to talk about tires, because this entire service visit was to put new tires on it. Now, the car actually had brand new tires on it when I bought it from the dealership, but what I found out later is that these were the absolute cheapest piece of garbage tires you have ever seen in your entire life. Like, I'm talking, these tires are like $50 a tire. So cheap. And it turns out those tires had a huge impact on road noise, ride quality, and most importantly, the range. Once you start getting to a certain price point of tires, you're kind of getting like diminishing returns as you go up in price when it comes to how efficient the tires are for like aerodynamic reasons. But when it comes to the super, super low end of tires, if you put those on an electric car, it is going to have a huge impact on your range. And I didn't know that until I got the new tires put on, because the main reason I got the new tires put on was because these tires were so bad in the snow, the absolute worst tires I've ever experienced in the snow. Like, they were literally so bad to the point that I was like, I think these are actually like dangerous to drive with in the snow, or even in the rain. They were terrible. And it turns out those new tires, not only were they quieter, they rode better, but they had a massive positive impact on my range. And when I say massive impact, I'm talking about like the most range that I ever got out of that car on like a road trip with those old tires in the summer was about 220 miles of range. But now that summer's starting to roll around again, I'm getting like 270, 280 miles of range. That is like a difference of like 50, 60 miles. That is a huge difference. Now, the area where you're going to see that the most when it comes to tires is on the highway. So if you're driving mostly on the highway, your tires are going to have a much bigger impact than if you're just driving around town. Driving the car around recently, now that it's gotten warm out again, I am seeing watt hours per mile figures so low on this car that I have never seen before when I had those old tires last summer. So I should probably tell you what tires I put on the car. Well, it was literally just the stock tires that would have came with the car from the factory, which are Michelin MXM for all season tires. So I just put on these stock tires that would have come with the car when it was new. I know on the new Model 3s, they put on like Hankook Ventus tires, I think. But with these cars, they put these Michelins on here, which I personally think are a little bit better than the Hankooks. And this whole job cost me $1,254.35. So that is a pretty hefty price for tires. But I mean, when it comes to electric vehicles, now that I actually have these new tires on it, you should not put cheap tires on these. And that is something you definitely need to look out for if you're looking at one of these used, is look at the tires. Look up what brand they are, because if you're buying it from like a regular car dealership, I bet you they just put the cheapest pieces of garbage on there that they could possibly find, because that's what they did to me. But anyways, moving on to this next one, which again is another thing where nothing broke on the car. Well, actually it did, but it was completely my fault, because what happened was it was snowing and there was already snow on the road, like accumulated snow there, and there was a good amount of it. And there was a dead deer in the middle of the road, and I could not see it fast enough, and I did not have enough traction to stop nor steer out of the way. So I just had to run over it. And so you're watching the dash cam footage of that right now, and you can see the whole car kind of like moves up. I think the whole car got airtime going over that deer. And what happened there is there's this cover under the front, where the front motor sits and where the rear motor sits. There's like this aero cover that makes the bottom of the car completely flush. The front cover came off because the deer took it off. And I needed to get the underbody inspected, because when it comes to electric cars, if you run over something and something on the bottom comes off, or your car gets freaking airtime from running over a deer, you're going to want to get that underbody inspected, because that's where the battery sits. And if something punctured the battery, you're going to be in big trouble. So I was really worried that like a deer antler like punctured the battery or something. But also, if something punctures the battery, it would probably start on fire right away. So I probably would have known. But luckily, when I put in my service request, literally that night, like at that point, like I was putting it in at like 9 p.m. And I said, like, I ran over a deer, like I need to get the underbody inspected. And I found this panel, because I literally went back and like found the panel that fell off the car. I grabbed it and it was like super mangled and like torn up. I was like, there's no way this one is going to go back on. So they're definitely going to have to replace it with another one.
But I grabbed it anyways. So, and I knew that it had come off because I had it in hand. So I'm like, I'm definitely gonna have this. Like, I was gonna get it looked at anyway, just to get the underbody inspected, make sure everything was okay with the battery. But this panel also needs to be replaced. So I literally put in my service request at like probably like 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And one complaint I kind of have about Tesla service a lot is that there's not enough service centers for how many cars need to be serviced. So usually, so it depends, because sometimes I'm able to get a service appointment within like a few days, but sometimes I've literally had to wait like 2.5, like 3 weeks just to get like any availability at the nearest service center to me. And also the nearest service center is still like an hour away. Like, there's not one in the city that I live in, which is unfortunate. So that was the same deal with this. Like, I think the next appointment was like 2 weeks away. And I'm like, oh, geez, well, if that's the nearest one, that's the nearest one I can get. But luckily they messaged me in the morning and they were like, can you come in today? Probably because they're like, oh, you ran over something and we need to inspect the battery to make sure it's not going to blow up. They didn't say that, but he literally just messaged me and said, can you come in today? He didn't say anything else. He didn't say like somebody canceled or like, oh, this is urgent, we can slip you in right here just to get this inspected. He just said, can you come in today at like 7 in the morning? And I was like, yeah, sure. I'll be there in like 2-3 hours. So I show up there and they inspect the underbody and they're like, yeah, that panel's missing. So we replaced it. We inspected the rest of the underbody. There's nothing that punctured the battery, luckily, and everything else is fine. And I was like, whew, that was lucky. So in total, to do an underbody inspection and to get that panel replaced cost $352.16. So again, with that one, that was like another service visit that only needed to happen because of something that happened that was my fault. But this next one though, we're going to February 12th of 2026 now. And this one was because I was starting to get some really bad suspension creaking. And at first, maybe I just thought, well, it's really cold out right now. It's like January and we're in Wisconsin, so maybe it's just making some noise. But it kept happening and it kept getting louder. And I'm like, okay, something's not right here. So I schedule a service appointment through the app and I take it in, and I'm actually waiting there with the car this time. And they tell me they recommend replacing the rear upper forelinks on both the left and right sides, as well as the front lower lateral links on both the left and right sides of the vehicle. Now, at the time, I didn't have them fix it right then because I had already been waiting there for like 2 hours and I had to go to work. So I didn't have them replace it at that time, but I did schedule a date for them to replace it later. So just that diagnosis cost, what was that? $237.38. Now to the actual repair, which happened on February 24th, so a couple weeks later. And I mean, this creaking noise was literally like every time I would accelerate from a stop or decelerate to a stop, it was just like, it was just like I can't do it, but it was literally sounded like a giant door creaking every single time you would start out or stop, or you would turn the wheel like all the way to the right or to the left and it would start creaking. And I'm like, okay, I need to get this fixed. So once it was all said and done, that repair cost $1,459.30. But unfortunately, that repair did not completely fix the issue. And they actually told me that and like had me drive the car with the technician before I left. So and he was completely honest and upfront with me. He's like, listen, we replaced these. The noise is not completely gone. It's better than it was before, but I'll have you drive the car with me just so you can hear how it is. And if you want us to look at it again, you can bring it in again and we'll look at it again. So I went on a drive with him and I'm like, oh yeah, it's still coming. It still sounds like it's coming from the rear. The sound in the front and when I turn is gone, but the sound in the rear is definitely still there. So the technician's like, yeah, it sounds better than it did when you brought it in, but it's not completely fixed. So if you want to bring it in again at a later date, we'll waive the diagnosis fee and we'll just charge you for whatever part we end up replacing. So, I was kind of busy during this time, but eventually I did take them up on that offer. And on April 2nd, I did take it in again. And I took it in again, not only because was the noise annoying, but now the noise was like coming and going. It wasn't there all the time, but it was there sometimes. And when it was there, it was extremely annoying. So not only did I take it in for that, but I also needed to get the tires rotated. And so I was like, well, I'll just get the tires rotated while they take a look at this as well. So, and like he said, they would do a free inspection and diagnose it again since they didn't completely fix the issue the first time. So they did that. And they also found that the ball joints on the rear, I believe, yeah, the ball joints on the rear were worn, but that wasn't what was causing the issue. He basically just said, yeah, the ball joints will make your tires wear unevenly if the ball joints are worn. That's not what's making the noise, but if you want to replace those, we can replace those. And I was like, yeah, just go ahead and replace those. But what was actually causing the noise, they said, was the rear right knuckle assembly, which I think the knuckle is basically just like the entire assembly that attaches the rotor and wheel to the rest of the suspension. So I guess that knuckle was like worn and it was making a creaking noise. Now, the funny part about this is when I took it there initially, the noise wasn't there. It was completely gone. So I go on the ride with the technician and I'm like, yeah, of course now it's not doing it. And that day it happened to be like rainy and wet. And he's like, yeah, sometimes when it's rainy and wet, like that can like lubricate stuff. And he's like, but luckily, I was also there for a tire rotation. They went ahead and did that while I waited there. So I was waiting for them to do that. And then once they were driving it back out, when they were done rotating the tires and replacing the ball joints, the technician was like, wait, I hear it now. Because they came out, like I was in the waiting room, I was just on my computer or whatever, and they told me, he's like, so we finished up with the ball joints and rotating the tires, but when the technician was driving it out, he heard the noise that you were talking about. Probably because it had been inside in their shop at that point, and it had like dried, and it's like not cold and wet like it is outside, so whatever was lubricated before wasn't lubricated, so now it was making the noise. So the technician was like, yeah, I hear the noise now, and we're going to have to keep the car longer to diagnose it further, so we're going to give you a loaner. So they gave me a loaner, and they gave me a freaking Cybertruck, which was like, wow. Anyways, once I picked up the car, this time it was actually fixed, and the sound was completely gone, and the sound has not returned. But that last repair that I did get, that did cost $915.74, but that also included a tire rotation, but that was only $65. But again, that is maintenance that you would have to do on the vehicle. So I'm including that in the cost. So I'm going to add up the cost of the first diagnosis I got, the first repair that didn't fix it, and the second repair that did fix it, to tell you how much this, just to get this problem fixed, cost in total. So in total, that cost $2,612.42 to get a creaking sound from the front and rear suspension fixed. Yikes. That is hefty. So with that, now I'm going to add up every single maintenance item or thing that I've had to get fixed on this car over the past year. So that's not going to include the things that I just went to the service center for because I wanted to get them done, like the CCS retrofit, the tires. I'm not including those. I'm also not including when I ran over the deer because that was totally my fault. I ran over a freaking deer. So what that's going to include then is the door handle thing that I had to get fixed, the 12-volt battery dying and having to buy a new one, and the whole suspension work that had to get done on that. So totaling all that up, it totals $3,310.12. That's how much it has cost me to fix things and maintain this car for the past year. Now, with that, I do have to say that these are all things that I would expect to happen on a car at this mileage that is, frankly, made in America. I just have to say it. American companies are just not that good at making cars because I've had GM cars before in the past. I hate them. I've heard other horror stories about American car brands not being reliable. So these are things that I would expect to happen to an American car at this mileage, but still doesn't hold a candle to my old Honda that had 170,000 miles when I sold it. There was nothing wrong with that thing. So it turns out EVs do have maintenance costs, especially when they start getting to this mileage. Now, this is totally Tesla specific, and I know Tesla has quality issues. So other EV makers, they are probably way better. There are some EV makers that are undoubtedly better when it comes to making suspension parts and electronic components and that kind of stuff. Because especially when it comes to the suspension, I feel like that's the stuff that Tesla is just like not good at. They're great at making the computers, they're great at making the software, but they're not that great at actually making the car. I almost kind of wish Tesla would license their technology to actual car brands that know how to make cars, and that would make an overall better car as a whole. But that's just me. But another thing I want to note here when it comes to maintenance is that, like I said, I've driven this car 30,000 miles in the past year. And if this was a gas car where you have to change the oil every 5,000 miles, or you should change the oil every 5,000 miles, even if the manufacturer says you can do it every 8,000 miles, you still shouldn't do it. You should always do it every 5,000 miles. Doesn't matter how new the car is, doesn't matter what the manufacturer is, doesn't matter what kind of oil it is. It should always be every 5,000 miles. Anyways, that's a little rant I have on that. But anyways, if this was a gas car and I was following that rule, I would have had to change the oil 6 times this year. Now, the general rule of thumb when it comes to changing your oil is every 5,000 miles or every 6 months if you don't drive that much. So for most people, they're replacing their oil like every 6 months, so twice a year. I would have had to do it 5 times a year with how much I've been driving this car. So that is a cost that I don't have to incur, which is oil costs. But again, I just showed you how much I've had to spend fixing things on this car, and it definitely totals more than what I would have had to spend on oil. But that is literally every single service and maintenance item I've had to do on this car over the past year. And it's kind of a lot, unfortunately. I've been recording this video for over an hour now, just this segment of this. So clearly it was a lot of stuff. And I just kind of want to be upfront and honest with you guys about what it's like to actually own a Tesla with this much mileage on it. Because I feel like nobody's really talked about this. Like, I don't feel like I've seen another YouTube video where somebody's like, yeah, I've had to spend like $3,300 over the course of a year just fixing stuff on the car. So that's why I'm making this video, because I feel like it needs to be out there, because there are a lot of people who are looking, especially right now with how gas prices are, for used EVs, and they really don't know what they're getting into. Now, I'm not trying to make this video to dissuade you from getting a used EV, but I'm trying to use this video to help you get a used EV and not get something that is going to have a bunch of issues. So for example, like the tires, if I would have known that those tires were that freaking cheap and that they would have affected the range that much, I would not have bought this specific car. I would have bought one that had better tires on it. The door handle thing also, I did not know that that was like a problem until like a day or two after I bought the car, and I'm like, something is not right with this. If I would have known that beforehand, I again wouldn't have bought this car unless the dealership fixed it, which they probably wouldn't have. And again, another thing, I wouldn't have bought this car if I knew the 12-volt battery was that close to the end of life and that it was going to die any second. Because I think what might have happened is that the dealership may have just like cleared the error code that the battery was about to die. Like the car may have given a warning that the battery was going to die soon, and the dealership may have just been like, yeah, just clear that code out. We'll sell it anyways. They totally could have. I have no idea. So yeah, that's been my maintenance experience over the past year. It hasn't been great. It hasn't been completely terrible, because I will say the Tesla service team, they are really great. They are really friendly, and they really explain things well to you, and they're always extremely nice and extremely helpful. But what I could definitely say for sure is this is not what I expected to be doing when buying an EV. And again, like a lot of people have this kind of misconception. It's like, oh, well, it's an EV. You don't have to do any maintenance on it, like at all. Well, turns out you do, because electric cars, they still have suspensions, they still have control arms, they still have tires. Turns out. But I need to move on from this because I've been on this segment for way too long, and now this video is going to be extremely long. But anyways, next thing I want to talk about is battery health and battery degradation, because this is something that is really important when it comes to buying a used EV. Because a lot of people don't realize that lithium-ion batteries literally degrade every single second of every single day. Like literally they do. So what that basically means is that over time, as the battery ages, it will not be able to hold as much charge as it did when it was new, basically. So for example, when this specific car was new, the battery pack size is about 75 kilowatt hours. And right now, with my estimates, we're going to do a battery health test, and we're going to look at the results of this. But just based off my estimates and how much I've been driving it and how much I've actually been able to get out of it, there's about 61 kilowatt hours in the battery pack still. So that's a loss of about 14 kilowatt hours over 106,000 miles. Now, we're going to do the battery test. We're going to look at what the car actually comes up with, but that's just what I have been able to convene from my driving experience. But the battery does degrade over time. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Used to have 75 kilowatt hours. Now it has estimated 61 kilowatt hours. And that's something that you really need to factor in when buying a used EV. Now that I'm more versed in this, I would not even buy a used Tesla if whoever is selling it does not run a battery health test on it. And a lot of people that are selling Teslas will include a picture of where it says on the car, oh, your battery's healthy, and it looks like this. But if you actually read that entire thing, it says that if the button for you to run a battery health test is here, that means that the results have expired. So that doesn't necessarily mean the battery is still healthy. So if it looks like this and it has all this text here with the button that says start battery health test, that means that they did run a health test at some point, but it was so long ago, which I think the threshold is 6 months. I think the results are valid for 6 months. That means they need to run a new test. So I wouldn't even buy a used Tesla unless they run a battery health test on it right now, because this is not something that you want to mess around with. You don't want to end up in a situation where you buy the car and you find out within like 2 days that the range is like half of what it should be. And then you run a battery health test and it says, yeah, the battery's fucked up. That you do not want that to happen to you, because the battery is by far the most expensive part of an electric vehicle. And most of the time, especially if you're buying a used one, if you have to replace the entire battery pack, that is going to cost more than what the car is actually worth. So it is not going to be worth it to actually do that. So that is something that you really need to look out for when buying a used Tesla, is have the seller run that battery health test. Or there's other like third-party services that can even do an external battery test of the car. Those work too, but you need to see valid results right now of the condition that the car is in right now that tell you if the battery is healthy or not. Because without that, I wouldn't, like I said, I wouldn't even buy one unless they actively ran a battery health test on it, because you just don't know and you don't want to risk that. Now, I want to talk about for a second why lithium ion batteries degrade. And as far as my understanding is, now I'm not a frickin' scientist, okay, guys? Like, I like making videos about this stuff and I'm interested in it, but I'm not a battery chemist. But as far as I understand, the battery degrades because the chemistry of the battery starts to break down over time. Every single time that it discharges and recharges, the chemistry is slightly breaking down every single time that happens. So I think that's why batteries degrade. But my experience with this car and battery degradation has actually been pretty good. Like I said, estimated around 61 kilowatt hours, still usable. We're going to run the battery test and see. But now that it's summer again, it's warmed up and I've got these new tires on the car, going from 100% to 0%, I'm estimating probably about 270 miles of range. And that's pretty good. And I've been able to actually get in the real world like 250 miles. Like I think 252 or something like that is the most I've ever gone. And I think at that point I still had 9% left. And that was from 100%. But just one more thing before we actually run the damn test. I have to tell you how I've actually been using this battery pack. Now for the 2025 portion of when I had the car, I was not using the car for Uber. So I was only charging it to 80%. Well, actually, once winter came around, I started charging it to 90% just to have a little extra buffer just in case, because I noticed how much range I was losing in the winter. So actually, for most of that time, I've been charging it to 90% every single night. But once I started using it for Uber consistently, which has been for about the past 4.5 to 5 months, I've been charging it to 100% 4 to 5 days a week. Now, let me explain to you why that's bad, or at least why people say that it's bad. Because depending on what type of electric car you have and what battery chemistry it is, that can be damaging to the cells and make the battery degrade faster. Now, the chemistry that matters for is NMC chemistry, because that is the chemistry that doesn't like to be charged to 100% and stay there for long periods of time. But like LFP chemistry, for example, LFP does not care if you charge it to 100%. In fact, with LFP chemistry, you actually do have to charge it to 100% every so often so that the cells stay balanced. But that's getting into really nuanced stuff. But what you need to know is with these older Teslas, if it's a standard range one, it probably has an LFP battery. And if it's a long range, it has an NMC battery. Now, the newer ones are different. They don't make ones in the US with LFP battery packs anymore, even if it's the standard range. But these older ones, that is how it was. Standard range, LFP battery, you can charge it to 100% every day. You don't have to worry about it. Long range ones, which this one is, the one that I have, NMC chemistry. Now, you may have noticed that I said that NMC chemistry doesn't like it when it's charged to 100% and left there. So that is why this is important, because I don't charge it to 100% and leave it there for like a day. I charge it to 100% and maybe at maximum let it sit for 5 or 6 hours, and then I drive the car. Most of the time it's sitting for less than 3 hours before I start driving the car. And that's really when you're probably going to see the most battery degradation by charging it to 100%, is if you charge it to 100% and then let it sit there for a long time. And when I say for a long time, I'm talking about like 12 plus hours. So I just wanted to tell you that before I run the battery test and we look at the results so that you actually know, like, this is how I'm using the car. So charging to 100% 4 to 5 days a week, letting it sit for usually 3 hours or less before I drive it. So with all that rambly stuff out of the way, we're actually going to run the battery test now, which I think will take about 15 or 16 hours. So let's get over to the car and see how it performs. All right, guys, so we're about to run the battery test. Now, what you have to do for this is you have to plug it in to a charger that can supply at least 5 kilowatts of consistent energy. So that would be a level 2 charger of any kind, basically, that works on 240 volts. And you have to arrive and start the battery test with less than 20% state of charge, because it is going to completely drain the battery all the way down to 0%. It's going to run the heating and it's going to do whatever it can just to get the battery down to 0%. And then it's going to start charging from your charger, and it is going to charge it all the way up to 100%. And then it is going to tell you exactly how many kilowatt hours that used, and then it's going to tell you how much your battery has degraded since it is new. So taking a look here, we're about to run this, so I didn't charge the car fully today. I only charged it to 87%, and we've arrived back home with 1%, so almost exactly at 0%. And I just did some calculations. If I would have charged to 100% and gone all the way down to 0%, that would have given us a range of 287 miles. But we only went 246 miles because, like I said, we only charged to 87%. We didn't charge it fully. But I just want to say real quick before we run this, a range of 287 miles in an electric car that has over 100,000 miles on it with a degraded battery is very good. Now, this is in the summer, of course. Like I said, I've made a whole video on how that range can like be cut in half in winter weather. I don't know who needs that much range out of their car every single day. I mean, so many people still think that EVs can only go like 100 miles and that's it. But actually, the car that I had before this was a brand new car, and that car, I usually only got about 240 miles of range out of a full tank of gas in that car, in a gasoline vehicle. So this 6-year-old car with over 100,000 miles on it, I am consistently getting more range out of this in the summer than I was in my last car that was a gas vehicle.
So people that say that EVs don't have enough range, I really don't get it, because when this thing was new, it would have over 300 miles of range. It would even have more range than this. And we're about to find out how much the battery is degraded, so let's run the test now. So to get to this battery test, you just have to click on the little car icon down here, go to service, and then we're gonna hit battery health, which is right at the bottom. Then we can hit battery health test button. So before you begin, vehicle has to be in park, vehicle levels 20% or less, vehicles connected to the internet, no software updates are scheduled, no battery or thermal alerts are active, and I haven't connected the charger yet, so we just have to connect the charger, and it has to be able to supply at least 5 kilowatts of power. Now, it tells you that this could take up to 15 hours, but the less state of charge you start the test with, the less amount of time it's gonna take, because it has to get all the way down to 0% first before it can start charging the car. So that's why I've tried to arrive with the lowest state of charge possible, so we have 1% left. So now let's go plug in the charger and we're going to start the test. All right, we've got the charger plugged in, and now there was a little click in the charger. Just wanted to make sure it could supply at least 5 kilowatts of power. This is on a 30 amp circuit, so and there's an 80% rule, so it only runs at 24 amps instead of 30 amps, so it can supply about 5.5 kilowatts of power. So we're just over the minimum that we need. So then we can hit start test. Then it says it's going to take 15 hours. You can hear the car's fans heating up because it's going to get that battery all the way down to 0%, which shouldn't take very long because it's already at 1%. But I'll see you in 15 hours or maybe less than that. I don't think it's going to take that long because we're already at 1%, but let's find out. I don't even know if you can hear me, but it's extremely loud because it's just running the climate control so it can get the heat generation and get the battery down, but let's see what the results are.
Hello, I'm back. Yes, I know it looks different. Thank you for commenting that. A lot of time has passed since the first part and the second part, and I've been trying to get this video done forever, but I had to wait to do the battery test for a lot of different reasons, but it is now done, and the results are here. So we have 86% capacity after now 107,000 miles when I did this test. And we're going to look at some reports from Tesla and how that compares to that, and what I've seen from some other videos of people online doing battery degradation tests on their cars. But I'll just say initially, I don't think that that is bad. I don't think it's good. It's just kind of right in the middle, because considering how much I've abused this battery, just having the car in Wisconsin alone and it being through 6 years of winter is just, that's already a lot of abuse on a battery, just having it in a cold climate. But also I'm charging it to a 100% all the time. So I honestly expected it to be a little bit lower, because you hear charging it to 100% is bad and it can degrade the battery fairly fast is what I've heard. But I've been doing it for the past 5 months and we still have this 86% result, which I think is okay. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's okay, because I recently just watched a video from Out of Spec Reviews, and I'll put a card to it up here. You should go and check it out, where he did a battery degradation test on his Model S Plaid, which I believe was a 2022, but he only had about, I think it was 57,000 miles on the car. Let me check that. Yes, I was correct. 2022 Model S Plaid, 57,000 miles, which I know that is a different car than this, but it's still a Tesla. They both use batteries. But the result he got in that video kind of shocked me, because that's a car with almost half the mileage of this one, and that got 87% battery capacity, 1% more than this car with almost double the mileage, which is interesting to me. You know, and I've kind of seen this on Reddit too, where people are doing battery degradation tests on the newer cars that have different cells with slightly different chemistry, and the battery degradation results seem to be worse than in some of these older cars, which is weird to me, because I know in their newer cars they switched to using NCA cell chemistry, I believe, and I think the reason that they did that is because it was cheaper. But I'm like, if it degrades faster, is it really that much better? And I want to take a look. So there was a report from 2023 that I'm looking at here, where Tesla did testing of the Model 3 and Model Y long range, and they found, I'm just reading off the thing here, that vehicles showed an average battery degradation of 15% after 200,000 miles, and we're at 14% battery degradation at 107,000 miles. So we're definitely not going to hit that 15% at 200,000 miles. But like I said, this battery's been abused, charged to 100% a lot, been through winter, low states of charge a lot of the time. So this battery has not had an easy life. So I would expect that. But this video with the Plaid where it has 57,000 miles and it's already lost 13% capacity, there's no way that's going to hit 15% at 200,000 miles. It's not even going to hit 15% at 100,000 miles. So I'm like, these new battery cells that they're using, they're saying they have higher energy density and they're saving so much cost per cell. But I'm like, if they degrade almost twice as fast, are they really any better? Because I don't think they are. Now, when it comes to battery degradation, most of it happens within the first year, like 3 to 6% battery degradation usually happens within the first year, and then it kind of drops off after that. So there might not be much more battery degradation after this point with my car because most of it happens within the first year. And there hasn't been a noticeable difference from when I got the car a year ago to now. In fact, like I've said before, with getting the new tires and everything, I've only seen increases in range since I've gotten the car in the past year. There's been no noticeable degradation since I got the car. Now, what's interesting about this report to me is that Tesla also said they reported a 12% capacity loss for Model S and Model X vehicles with that same mileage of 200,000 miles. So this kind of tells me that the battery cells have been getting worse because the Model X and the Model S have been around for longer, and they're seeing 12% capacity loss at 200,000 miles, which is a great result. And then with the Model 3 and Model Y, they're seeing 15% at 200,000 miles. And this was before the refresh, and I think this was before they started using the new NCA cells that they're using now. So this kind of hints to me that the battery cells have been getting cheaper and worse over time, which I don't think is a good thing. Obviously, more battery degradation is not good. And these newer cells, they keep saying, yeah, they have higher energy density or whatever. But if they degrade almost twice as fast, does that extra energy density really matter? Because it's going to end up having the same amount of range as a more expensive cell that doesn't have as high of energy density after a few years if it degrades way faster. So does it, you know what I mean? So honestly, I'm kind of torn on this result. I'm totally okay with the result of my car, but I am kind of concerned about the newer vehicles, and it seems like we've been seeing faster degradation rates on the newer vehicles. I really like that video with the Model S Plaid. It really kind of shocked me because I'm like, that car has 57,000 miles on it and it's lost 13% of its capacity already. Like, that seems like a lot. Now, it could be that with the newer cars, the first year or two cliff is just a lot more steep than the older cars, and it'll still level off, and then it'll be about 1% per year. We don't know. But this is something I'm really concerned about when it comes to EVs as a actual good faith replacement for gas vehicles, because the average vehicle in the US is scrapped after 200,000 miles, which I personally think is ridiculous because the car I had before the last car I had was a 2013 Honda Accord that had like 178,000 miles on it when I sold it, and it still worked fine. There was nothing wrong with it. Barely ever had any issues with that thing. So that thing definitely would have gone way past 200,000 miles. But just cars in general are built so cheap these days that I'm like, well, of course you have to scrap it at 200,000 miles because they don't know how to build cars anymore. But anyways, getting a little ranty there. But what I'm saying is, average car in the US is scrapped at 200,000 miles. So if these can last for 200,000 miles without a super huge amount of battery degradation on the same battery pack, then I think they can be a good faith replacement to gas vehicles. Now, I do wish that vehicles in general would just last longer, because I think vehicles should last like 20 years, but modern vehicles, gas vehicles, they won't. They really just, they won't. They don't make them like they used to. But at least when you're comparing modern cars to modern EVs, it seems like EVs will last perfectly as long as a gas vehicle would, and probably even longer. There are examples of Model 3s and Model Ys with over 400,000 miles on them with the original battery pack. So that's double the mileage of the average American car is scrapped after. And these cars still have the original battery pack, original motors, and they work completely fine. A lot of them still even have the original brake pads, which is insane, but they do. Anyways, back to the results of my car. I'm happy with this result. It's completely fine for me. I actually thought it was going to be a little bit lower because I estimated that the car would have about 61 kilowatt hours usable, but it turns out it actually has 64 kilowatt hours usable. That's what it got from the battery test. So that means, because I was going off what the car was telling me, where it says 100% to 0%, and I was like, okay, so I charged it to 100%. I've used 50%. I'm at 50% now. This is how many kilowatt hours I've used, which is usually 30 and a half. So if that's half the battery, then 30 and a half plus 30 and a half is 61. So my calculation was that it would be 61 kilowatt hours, but it actually turned out to be more than that, which means that when you get to 0%, there's still a little bit of buffer there of about 3 kilowatt hours, at least in the case of this car. So yeah, I'm happy with this result. The degradation to me seems fine considering how much I've used the battery, and I'm not concerned at all about the battery like failing and like I'm going to have to pay $20,000 to get the battery replaced. I'm not concerned about that at all. That's the least of my concerns with this car. I've told you about all the service visits. None of that had anything to do with the high voltage system and the big battery. All of that is completely fine. And the battery is warranted for 8 years or 120,000 miles. Now we're at 107,000 miles, so we're getting towards the end of that. And it'll probably be at 120,000 miles by the end of this year. So it'll probably be out of warranty, but I'm really not worried about it. I'm more worried about like another control arm breaking or another upper forelink breaking, because those are the things that are kind of known to be problems with this car. Pretty much everything that I've had serviced with this car are things that are known to go wrong and need to be replaced on these cars. So yeah, that's my experience. Is it the most reliable car I've ever had? No. That crown still goes to the 2013 Honda Accord. Is it the most unreliable car I've ever owned? It might be, actually, but I've only ever had 3 cars. This is only my 3rd car. But what I will say, just one more thing, I promise, is that the car I had before this was a brand new car. And that thing spent over a month in the dealership trying to get a manufacturer defect fixed, and they couldn't fix it. So, amount of time spent in a repair shop actually goes to the car I had before this, which was a brand new vehicle, and they couldn't even fix that. So, time spent in the shop, this isn't the car that has spent the most time in the shop. Unfortunately, it was a brand new car that spent the most time in the shop. So maybe it's not the most unreliable vehicle I've ever had. So to summarize, would I buy another used Tesla? Well, yes, and I actually do kind of want to. I still want to keep this car. I want to keep this car until it absolutely dies and will not move anymore, because I really do want to see how long it will last. But I do actually kind of want to get another Tesla, and I'm thinking about getting like maybe an older Model S. But if I were to buy another one, I would not buy it with those cheap ass tires on it, and I would not buy it unless they did an updated battery test. Those are the 2 things. And also, make sure the door handles work correctly. Understand how they work when you test drive the car so that when you see it, you can know if they're working incorrectly, because I didn't know completely how they worked when I test drove the car, so I thought it was fine, and then I realized later. But anyways, guys, that's going to be about it. This video's gone on for way too long. If you have any other questions for me about the car, repairs, maintenance, anything like that, leave them down in a comment below. Make sure to like the video, subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.